So I just wanted to start off by explaining a little bit about where I've come to. As a journalist, I've managed to edit newspapers in the UK, worked in Paris, in New York, and also in Australia. As an editor, you get to sit in the executive room and you discuss the business of each newspaper that I've worked for, each media company. Every year that I worked, I was told to take out maybe 40 or 50 journalists. So at my last paper at The Age, I started with 350, and by the time I left, we were down to about 200 after 5 years. And this is because the business model of that newspaper in Melbourne, but it's the same story all over the world, was being cut back as revenues fell. What that did to the consumer was to give you a shallower or a less deep service. And of course, readers then, through the internet, could access content all over the world and could compare the shallower content with the richer content elsewhere. So this led to a crisis. Now, I want to tell you about that crisis because in 2011, I left my paper, and I wanted to think of a new way of producing rich content from people who really knew what they were talking about, as opposed to many newsrooms which were being hollowed out and the expertise was leaving. So in many ways, when you talk about the failure of journalism, it's not so much the failure of journalists, it's the failure of the business model of journalism, which underpinned previous staffing. So the first thing I did was I was invited by the Vice-Chancellor, which is the rector or the director of Melbourne University, to go and meet him at Melbourne University. And he introduced me to some of his experts. And it suddenly hit me. I thought, these are the people with deep knowledge, deep wisdom, deep understanding. I just need to connect them to the wider public, because many of them aren't disciplined to write in a clear, engaging way and to set deadlines. So I thought, what if we have a collaboration between journalists and academics and researchers? So the first thing I did was launch, just lost my, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. The first thing I did was launch The Conversation. I launched that in 2011, and there are now 7 conversations around the world. The beauty of each one was it was written by academics, but edited by professional editors and pushed out to the public, to each of these websites. I think that was very good, but there was something I hadn't really thought through. What I hadn't thought through was each one of these 7 became national platforms. In other words, what they did was they spoke about the issues in the UK or Australia or US. And they did that by having editors and academics living in those countries, seeing the world through a national perspective. If you think about it, most of the media is organized that way. The big newspapers of the world, New York Times, Washington Post, London Times, Paris Le Monde, etc., they all carry the name of where they're edited. So they look at the world from one point of view. I wanted to move on. This new project, which I'm going to tell you about now, is about thinking about information without borders. We talked a lot about that this morning. So it's about a new way of reporting the world, not from the point of view of what does it mean for my country, what does global climate warming or change mean for my country, but what does it mean for the planet? And the same thing goes for food, water, energy, security, human rights, all these issues looked at in the round in a balanced way from different perspectives. So the new project I'm working on, and I hope to be able to announce that we've launched, but we haven't quite launched, we're still in development. And the reason I'm here today is because I met Guy Berger in May in Paris this year at UNESCO, and I told him about this project. We're very close to launching. And one of the reasons I was delighted to accept this invitation is this is about building partnerships. And if there's anybody in this room who's interested in this project, as I explained a little bit more to you, please can we talk afterwards? This is a collaborative project, a new way at looking at the world across borders. So, I wanted to show you this map. Many of you are familiar with this. What this shows is the reporting of news in a 24-hour period in 2016. I wanted just to show you the concentration of where information comes from in the world. In many ways, what I describe this slide as the view from Davos, because the Davos is the meeting in January every year of the elites who come together and, in a sense, decide how to see the world, what the agenda should be. What I want to do is take a different view, which is not a view from Davos, but one from Bogota, from Tunis, from Durban, from Jakarta, from different parts of the world. Because what this map also shows you is that 4 wire agencies in the world, and many of you will be familiar with them, Reuters, UPI, AFP, AP, headquartered in Washington, New York, London, and Paris. They deliver 90% of the world's information in terms of foreign news coverage, 90% from 4 agencies, all from rich countries. Those 4 wire agencies only have 25% of their content coming from 2/3 of the world population, those countries which are not in the red concentrated news areas. So what happens is, largely speaking, information is marginalized or neglected in certain parts of the world. That's the problem, and as I said right at the beginning, I want to move away from problems to solutions. So, this is a One World initiative, and the aim here is to offer a new wire service which connects up the world's universities, because there is a wonderful capacity in the world. Universities in 190 countries. Every part of the world is covered. Nothing is marginalized or neglected. We want to use technology to build a new network, a new service which connects the world's universities to better understand our world and to offer solutions. Not always solutions, but best practice. And of course, a key issue here is releasing this information to citizens everywhere. Now, why work with universities? At the very heart of academia, of research, is the pursuit of truth. It's sometimes called the scientific method. The scientific method is a little bit like a petri dish where you look at a virus, a flu virus. You try to understand that virus. You spend a lot of time trying to understand the problem before you work towards a solution. That is the scientific method which is carried out in universities across the world. Brilliant minds working on long-term research projects, not delivering a story, as journalists do, once a day or twice a day, but delivering research every few years, because it's deep. So that's the reason that we work with these information holders. The second thing is, sitting underpinning all that research is very strict codes of conduct. Now, we heard Christophe this morning talking about new trust indicators. Within universities, there are very strict rules around ethics and how you conduct your research. This is all building towards trusted information. And of course, as you probably know, when you publish a paper, a researcher that is, it's usually peer-checked. So the peer review, the peer checking, is part of the process of having reliable information. And by the way, we talk a lot about reliable information. Something which I think is just as important as access to information, and we have heard it many times referred to as a human right, is in the same way we need access to clean water, we need access to clean information. And to me, the universities is a repository of clean information. But we need to unlock it, we need to release it, we need to translate it, and we need to make it available for all. So the key attributes of this service, and this is where the editors work with the academics, are, first of all, a focus around the world's problems, not around breaking news. Because let me tell you, as a journalist, when you are on the 24/7 news cycle, you get caught up in the story. And all the media are caught up in the story. Everybody's doing the same stories, doing it from different angles. What I want to do is push all that to one side, the clutter, the noise of the everyday, and actually think about what are the critical issues facing this planet. And I'm going to talk about a different way of commissioning. It's called the reference panels, but I'll come back to that in a second. So what I want to do is information which is thoughtful, which is considered, which hopefully is useful. Everything will be driven, as I said, by deep research and ethics. And finally, and again I mentioned this, under Creative Commons, we want to unlock that knowledge, that wisdom, that information to the widest possible public. How are we going to do it? The first thing is, and this is SDG 17, is building partnerships. At the heart of this map, this new ecosystem of information, is the Global Academy, which is the editors, the professional editors. And we're going to be having hubs all around the world. We hope to have a hub. Our first hub in Africa will hopefully be at the University of Nairobi. We're working with the Jindal University in Delhi and Calcutta, working with Hong Kong universities, Singapore, New York University, and hopefully the University of Chile in Santiago, to build a global service, a global wire service. We're going to build networks in this top corner here with the World University Network, with the Association Pacific Rim Network, Universitas, with NGOs, with UNESCO, with UN agencies, and with think tanks, like, for example, the Asia Development Bank, our first partner, but also the World Bank and OECD. And finally, to disseminate, we're going to be working with media organizations and the big tech platforms, meaning Google and Facebook. So that's what we're building right now. I said I want to talk a little bit about the commissioning process. This is actually at the very heart of the Global Academy. Usually editors, if I was editing a paper, I would come in the morning and I'd say, today we're going to do this. And my reporters would go off and cover that. Here, we've got a philosophy which is look before you leap to commission. What does that mean? It means, sorry, this is a bit loose. It means working with our reference panels. Every single one of our sustainable development goals will have a reference panel. The reference panel will be typically between 20 and 30 subject matter experts in that area, drawn equally from global North and South universities, but also from some NGOs. Their job is to work with the editors to frame and scope and decide what to cover, tell us what not to cover, to tell us the information which has been badly covered, something that needs a much deeper approach. Only once we've agreed a brief do we go out then to commission. So it slows everything down, it's slow news, slow information, but it's considered, it's thoughtful, it's checked, and it's from many global perspectives. So once we've done that, we move to dissemination. And the dissemination is a push. Now, I don't know if I've made this clear, but this is not a destination website. We're not telling people, come to me. It's like Reuters and AFP and the other wire agencies. You read the content on your sites. So if anybody here is interested in publishing information, this is all free information which we push out to as many different platforms and publishers as possible. Everything from the media to, as I say, think tanks, universities, and of course, Google and Facebook. So that's what we're trying to do. And one last thing I should say is we're not going to call this project the Global Academy, because first of all, that's taken. But secondly, I wanted a name for this website which is not in the English language, because this website is going to be published in as many languages as we can, and I don't want to call it an English word. So we've got a different name, which will be a neutral name, which will work in, I think, every language. So if you're interested in this project, and I'm very excited about it, but it is a difficult project because I can't control it all myself, nor do I want to control it. It's about building bridges, building partnerships, and releasing the knowledge and the wisdom, translating it into information, clean information, and making it as widely available as possible. And I just want to finish with this one slide. We heard from Nadia this morning talking about the power of knowledge. This sums up what we're trying to do. Take the knowledge, translate it, make it available. That's the power of a new international wire service linking in universities in 190 countries to deliver a new service to the world. Thank you very much.